Chairperson and Judge Reyes. For my first question, should you be the ombudsman, how would you balance the need for aggressive investigation with due process and privacy rights of public officials?
Well, if I'd be the next ombudsman to have the investigation more aggressive, I think there's a need to retrain the personnel of the General Information Investigation Bureau, and especially on forensic audit to enhance them the capability to have a complete or comprehensive and perspective narrative of the facts under investigation. So they should have an additional skills. And also, I think there is a need for to establish a working relationship with the office of the COA. And it is very important, Your Honor, because so as to have a seamless obtention of the disbursement voucher and also the complete supporting document, which is very vital in every investigation against erring public official.
I think my second question was partially answered with that answer, but let me ask it just the same. What steps will you take to ensure that investigations lead to actual convictions and not just headlines?
Well, as I partly mentioned, so there is a need really to have a working relationship, especially with the office of the COA. Because I understand that disbursement voucher is basically as needed in all investigation, especially for malversation and plunder. Also, I think there is also, I need to, or I will confer with the special prosecutor and discuss maybe the problem areas and share the best practices of the office and likewise discuss the room for improvements in any investigation.
Lately, the issue of unexplained wealth has again resurfaced. Should unexplained wealth automatically trigger administrative administrative or criminal proceedings? Please explain your position.
Well, unexplained wealth per se, of course, is not immediately the ground for administrative charges. So it should be established that it's really an unexplained wealth. There is a need, for example, the lifestyle check, so as to establish indeed that the wealth in excess of the salary or compensation that the public official is receiving is actually ill-gotten. So there should, I need for a thorough investigation so as to establish that the wealth is really ill-gotten and unexplained, Your Honor.
Okay. Thank you. That was my final question, and thank you again, Attorney Cuevas.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Good luck po.
Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Mejia. Our next interviewer is the Honorable Justice Erlinda Piñera Uy.
Thank you, Attorney Cuevas. Good morning.
Good morning, ma'am.
Chairperson Reyes and Judge Reyes. How has your professional experiences in various fields of the legal profession, including your current position as chairperson of the PCSO, shaped your understanding of ethical governance and prepared you to handle complex demands of the ombudsman's role, particularly in leading with transparency and upholding public accountability?
Well, I have been a practitioner for more than 15 years. I stayed for almost 2 years in the Land Registration Authority. I have been a prosecutor in the city of Pasay before I was appointed as a presiding judge of the Regional Trial Court of Marikina City, and now as the chairperson of the PCSO. I think my experience in those offices, which I mentioned, will give me enough perspective to be the next ombudsman in issue of transparency and accountability.
And what key priorities would you set to strengthen public trust in the office of the Ombudsman? And how would you ensure that these priorities are effectively implemented?
Well, I think I'll give priority on the fast tracking of the disposition of the cases pending before the Ombudsman, for which reason I think the first thing that I will have to do is to conduct case inventory and case aging. I will also have to confer with the head of offices and just what I said earlier for me to ask them what's their best practice and also the problem areas in concern.
How do you define moral courage in public office, and if appointed, how would you best demonstrate your moral courage and independence from political influence?
Well, I think the best is to live modest and simple, and I think that is what is mandated to be a public official, especially this high official, to be the next ombudsman.
And how would you handle a situation where a complaint filed before the office of the Ombudsman involves a close friend, former colleague, or people of strong political influence?
Well, if the one of the party is a close friend, inhibition of course is there. But if it's not the one of the grounds for the inhibition, of course I have to apply the law as it is applicable to all.
But what would be the more action? More often than not, what action would you take? Just inhibit yourself, or pursue the case?
Well, pursue the case, and of course, parties you can delegate it to somebody, and without giving influence and without informing that one of the party is a close friend or close relative of yours.
What about people of strong political influence? How will you handle a situation
Well, I think
like
it
this?
does not matter whether the person charged is an ordinary person or a high-profile individual. I think they should be treated equally.
And what role should the Ombudsman play in ensuring compliance with procurement laws and preventing ghost projects or anomalous transactions?
Well, I think the Ombudsman even motu proprio can conduct its own investigation. And as I said earlier, I think it is very important to have a working relationship with the COA, because I understand that this disbursement voucher will at least help to have a complete picture of what really transpired in the government transaction under investigation.
So, if appointed at this point in time and knowing that there is a legislative inquiry on the ghost projects, will that be one of your priorities?
Yes, yes, Your Honor, since this is a hot issue now, so I'll give this a priority, well, of course, without disregarding all other cases pending and to be filed of whatever nature.
Beyond prosecuting corrupt officials, if appointed, do you think the Ombudsman should take a role in educating and empowering citizens to fight corruption? Please explain your answer.
Yes, Your Honor, that's one of my part of my plan, is to develop a corps of anti-corruption educators, which need to go around to the secondary school, particularly the high school students, and to discuss the corruption and its pernicious effect. I think the government should be proactive, not only reactive. It should be preventive, not curative. So I think we have to go to that direction.
So that was my last question. Good luck to you, Chairperson Reyes.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Justice Uy. Our next interviewer is the Honorable Congresswoman Jerville Luistro.
Thank you, Attorney. Good morning, Chairman.
Good morning po. Good morning po.
As former president of the Philippine Judges Association, you have expressed your opinion that abusive criticisms and unfounded accusations against judges can erode public trust in the judiciary. Question is, do you believe this principle equally applies to the Office of the Ombudsman, which also faces intense public criticism?
Well, as the next ombudsman or whoever will be the holder of this position, well, of course, he should not be onion skin for every criticism because obviously there will be two adversarial litigants in all cases, whether you are for the respondent, whether for the complainant. I think as an ombudsman, you have to be more strong than an ordinary RTC judge, Your Honor.
Chairman, is it not that the cases being handled by the judges or members of the judiciary are adversarial as well? So, what distinguishes the judiciary from the Office of the Ombudsman? Why, on your statement, judges should not be subjected to abusive criticisms and unfounded accusations, but with respect to the Ombudsman, you are now saying that they should not be onion skin?
Well, because more cases to be filed in the Ombudsman, we can say it is politically connection with or politically motivated sometimes. Unlike the cases, there are only few cases filed before the RTC, as we could say, is politically connected.
So it is because the respondents in the Ombudsman are politicians when the accused in the judiciary are not always politicians. Is that what you mean,
That is
Chairman?
one of the reasons, but of course the job is the same, and only I could say that ombudsman is more higher in terms of the cases filed before it.
For my second question, Chairman, if you are chosen as ombudsman, would you be inclined to relax the existing restrictions on public access to statement of assets, liabilities, and net worth?
Well, I understand that the existing memo circular is some restriction or well, if I'll be appointed, I will revisit all this. I will be issuing a new memo circular with more leniency. I will have to revisit the memo circular of the former ombudsman. But for sure, I would like to have the SALN more accessible to the public, but only for legitimate purposes.
Can you expound on the legitimate purpose that you asserted as the basis for making it accessible to public?
Well, if the purpose why a party is requesting the SALN of somebody, well, if it is under the investigation or a case is already been filed, so probably the ombudsman should allow the issuance of the said SALN, Your Honor.
And with respect to bank records, Chairman, of course, the Ombudsman's charter has the power to issue subpoena bank records. However, in a decision of the Supreme Court, it says that the same should be subjected still to a court order. If you will be given the chance to propose a legislative measure on the power of the Ombudsman to subpoena bank records, would you advocate for this legislative measure?
Yes, Your Honor, because one of the way or purpose to recover ill-gotten wealth is to have access on the bank account. So that's why it's also important for the next ombudsman to establish a working relationship with the Anti-Money Laundering Council. So, but maybe it is also important to determine on what stage of the investigation or case wherein access to bank account should be allowed.
And may we know, based on your perspective as a former judge of the RTC, where should be the proper stage when the ombudsman may exercise its power to subpoena bank records?
Well, if it was already an issue during the trial, if it is really needed in the determination of the threshold of evidence before filing the criminal information, I think it should be allowed.
So you are referring to that stage of preliminary investigation?
Yes, Your Honor.
How about with respect to the freeze order? Of course, the challenge of the Office of the Ombudsman is very tedious. And one of the challenges in the investigation is how to freeze the assets of the erring public officials. And if you will be given the chance to get this appointment, Chairman, and if you will be given the chance as well to propose a legislative measure, would you advocate that the Ombudsman be given its own power to issue freeze order?
Well, first I will have to revisit the existing law on how to freeze the asset of an erring public official. And I think it is also necessary for the next ombudsman to study, to have also an authority to issue an order or freezing order against erring public official, Your Honor.
And that is without necessarily going to court, Chairman?
Well, I think that's one consideration that is needed for the next ombudsman before issuing a court order, a freeze order, to have maybe propose a certain procedure. But of course, it should always be with the concurrence of the court.
Thank you. For the next question, Chairman, the DOJ issued circular number 15 and number 28. This elevates the amount of evidence required for preliminary investigation from probable cause to reasonable certainty of conviction standard. The question, Chairman, is, would you advocate for the same increased amount of evidence, considering that the Ombudsman likewise conduct?
Yes, Your Honor, that will
PI.
be one of my plans to revisit the threshold of evidence before initiating criminal information in court, also from probable cause to prima facie evidence. So meaning there should be a reasonable certainty of conviction.
And then with respect to the committee reports coming from Congress, there is a 2022 Ombudsman rule which provides that the same has to be subjected to a case build-up that is for 60 days, extendable to another 30 days, and that the proceedings shall not be considered as adversarial, and that the case should not be docketed yet until after the case build-up. However, this rule, Chairman, has been changed in 2025 because the 2025 rules of the Ombudsman now provide, upon receipt of the committee report, the same shall be automatically docketed and calendared for preliminary investigation. Which rule would you advocate for in case you are given the chance to be the next ombudsman?
I subscribe to the first case wherein it should not first be docketed. And although there was already an exhaustive investigation before the House or before the Senate, I think it should still be subject for a case build-up before the ombudsman. And I think it will still be part of the handiwork of the General Investigation Bureau.
Don't you think that is a gesture of diminishing the supposed credibility of the investigation conducted already by the Congress?
I don't think so. So this case build-up will only look for some lacking. What's more lacking as far as investigation or a case build-up. So of course they will not disregard whatever investigation conducted. But if they feel or they see that there's something lacking as far as the investigation to be conducted by the ombudsman, I think there's nothing wrong with that.
Earlier, you mentioned about partnership with the Commission on Audit. Currently, Chairman, the COA transmits their decision to the Ombudsman. But it is unclear whether that decision should be appreciated for case build-up or for preliminary investigation. How will you treat in case you're given this post? What appreciation as evidence will you accord to the COA decisions?
I think whatever decision coming from the office of the COA, I think it will still need to be scrutinized before, it should not be automatic that it should be referred right away for preliminary investigation. And if there is still lacking or additional documents to be required by them, so I think the Ombudsman should do that.
There is a view that the Ombudsman's office should be decentralized, so much so that there should be, apart from the Ombudsman of Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao, there should be regional offices and perhaps provincial offices. Will you advocate for the same decentralization, Chairman?
Well, first, what I will to do is to familiarize the existing organizational structure. But if there is really a need to decentralize, provided that the purpose is to have a speedy disposition of the cases pending, then I will subscribe to that, Your Honor.
In the past, Chairman, there is a practice to designate a resident ombudsman. This resident ombudsman in the past came from the government agency which is to be watched over. But there is a prevailing view that should this practice be adopted or readopted, that resident ombudsman has to come from the office of the ombudsman itself.
Well,
First question is, are you amenable to readopting the resident ombudsman system, which was implemented in the past?
Well, I don't think that is a good practice because as we all know, well, resident ombudsman, resident auditor, sometimes a relationship is being established with the agency where he or she is assigned. So whether it will come from the same agency or from the ombudsman itself, I'm not so convinced to that, Your Honor.
All right. And for my next question, the ombudsman has the power to issue contempt order. Would you be inclined to issue the same in case your dismissal order was issued a temporary restraining order by the court?
Well, of course, I will not do that. Well, if the decision of the ombudsman was elevated correctly in the appellate and it was reversed, well, that's as we could say, that's part of the job.
In other words, you will not issue TRO. Baligtarin ko po, Chairman. Suppose you have an ongoing investigation or preliminary investigation against one erring public official, and then the court suddenly issued a temporary restraining order enjoining your investigation.
Well,
What will be your position?
Well, I think under the rules, no inhibition or TRO can enjoin the ombudsman in the conduct of its investigation, unless there is a prima facie evidence that the matter being investigated is outside the jurisdiction of the Ombudsman.
In other words, you will heed to the TRO and you will stop the ongoing investigation in the Ombudsman.
If in my belief, the Ombudsman has jurisdiction in investigating that case, well, of course, I will not agree.
Thank you. That is my last question, and good luck to you, Chairman Felix Reyes.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Congresswoman Luistro. Our next interviewer is the Honorable Attorney Nesauro H. Firme.
Thank you, Attorney Marife. Good morning. Judge,
Good morning, Your
Chairperson,
Honor. Good morning, Your Honor.
wala ka bang tip sa amin kung anong
Wala pa po.
Wala pa. Yeah. Anong tatama? I have two sets of questions, Chair. One comes from the good Senator, Senator Alan Peter Cayetano. And he would like to know your stand on the lifestyle check. And you understand that the President has recently pronounced that all government officials should undergo this lifestyle check. What is your stand on
Well,
that?
I agree, and I believe that that is one mechanism wherein we can determine whether the public official really erred or committed grave misconduct, because you can determine from his lifestyle whether there was, a money that has been received aside from the legal or the salary or compensation that he is receiving.
Okay, so I'll ask my own set of questions, Chair. So if appointed as the next ombudsman, what can the stakeholders expect from you?
Well, as I said earlier, I will work on the early disposition of the cases pending before the ombudsman, and I would like also to make to enhance the investigators to have complete knowledge, especially on the forensic audit, because I think what is important is for the investigator to establish facts or the factual narratives of the transaction supported by strong evidence, not only relying on legal arguments.
So I was sifting through your records profile, Chair, and I noticed, and I've heard earlier that you've been a fiscal, you've been a judge. So despite all those accomplishments in your life, why do you still want to become the ombudsman?
Well, I think this is, of course, another tap on the career. So, just like all lawyers, if they some of them want to be in the appellate, but this is also one position that most lawyers is aiming.
Okay. And looking at your records again, Chair, you run as a party, as a nominee, no? Your party list, in other words, no, took part in the 2022 election, and you were first nominee.
Yes, Your Honor.
So my next question is, how apolitical are you?
Well, actually, what prompted me to run for party list? Actually, that party list is kabalikat ng hustisya, well, hopefully to represent the justice sector. Well, actually, what prompted me to avail of the optional retirement, because when I was the president of the Philippine Judges Association, we all know that there was this leadership issue, and actually, I was the one who led the call for then CJ Sereno to resign. And what really prompted me was when the decision on the quo warranto, well, there was this outcry and uprising from some sector. In fact, there was a coffin placed just across this building. There were rally in some houses of the justices, and I noticed that there was no one in Congress. In fact, the Senate was also against that decision. So that prompted me to run for the party list and represent the justice sector.
So independence, my next question would be, independence is one of the qualities of a good ombudsman. So in the discharge of your past or probably your present duty, now as a chairperson of the PCSO, can you tell us an instance where you displayed your independence?
As a judge, or now that
Either as a judge or as a chairperson of the PCSO.
Well, as a presiding judge, I think on several occasions I displayed my independence. In fact, I have several high-profile cases. I decided the Mauti cases when I was assigned in Taguig, and I think I made the first conviction under the Human Security Act before it was became the anti-terrorism bill, and then also the first conviction of the international humanitarian law. Well, I think I displayed independence on that high-profile cases, Your Honor.
Okay, next question is, another quality of a good ombudsman would be the possession of integrity. So, was there an instance where your integrity was put to test or was tested, and how did you navigate through that?
Well, there was, of course, always some attempt in the judiciary, but I am proud to say that during my incumbency as a judge, there was only one that I was charged administratively, but it was dismissed in less than a year. When I was a prosecutor, I was never been charged administratively.
So at present, are you ready for the life of the ombudsman? Because I understand there will be a lot of significant changes in your lifestyle. So how are you going to cope with that? You will be having bodyguards. I do not know, Judge, if you have right now, but are you ready for that?
Well, actually, I'm not used to bodyguard. When I handled that Mauti case, I just hired my personal driver. Well, now with the PCSO, and because of that House hearing wherein it was revealed that our former board secretary was killed, so, somebody advised me to have bodyguard. And I understand that as an ombudsman, it is some sort of a requirement.
And you are ready for that?
Yes, Your Honor.
How much do you value public perception, Chair? Yeah, you can drink muna.
Your Honor, of course, I value much more on the public perception on whatever position you are holding. It's very, to me, it's very important.
How about, of course, as a public servant, we are all aware that despite doing good things, we still get criticisms. How do you handle criticisms, Judge or Chair?
Well, of course, that as we call it, that's a part of the hazard of the trade. But if I know that it's only criticism, and I am a clear conscience that I really not part of it, I did not do it, so I just, of course, I just ignore it.
Okay. So let us just assume, Chair, that you are now the ombudsman, and today is 2029. No? So in other words, next administration na tayo. So you've been appointed in 2025, so 4 years from now. So there's a new president. So I have 5 things in mind, and I want you to rank them. No? One being the most significant, no, for you. Number 5 would be the least significant, not necessarily immaterial. No? So number 1 would be the president that appointed you to this post. Number 2 would be the next president. So it's 2029. No? So you are now part of the current public servants. Number 3 would be the public, the stakeholders, including their perception. Number 4 would be the safety of your family. And number 5 would be your personal goal. As you mentioned earlier, that is the dream of every lawyer. Your personal mission and vision, for the country.
Well, President, of course, the appointing authority. But of course, I have to bear in mind that the sitting president will be appointing the next ombudsman, not in his personal capacity, but by reason of his position as being the holder of the position. So, having said that, well, the accountability of the next ombudsman is not to the president. In fact, the president cannot remove the ombudsman. The accountability of the ombudsman is to the Filipino people who put the president in that position. That's why it's the Filipino people who can remove the ombudsman through the representative in Congress by way of impeachment. Well, for the next president, well, I think it's of course I just do what the ombudsman is supposed to do, irrespective of who is now the president and who will be the next president. And what's the third?
Number 3 is the public, stakeholders,
Well, of
including
course,
their perception.
I will be very particular on the public perception. That's why if I'll be the next ombudsman, I'll try to do my best, not only for myself, but for the entire office, to have a good perception coming from the public.
Number 4 will be the safety of your family, and number 5 will be your goal. So, which is the most significant among these 5?
Well, with respect to the security of my family, well, that was already given. We are a simple family. We came from Lipa. In Lipa, I have 4 children. So they are, of course, will understand the risk that is attached to the position. And then with respect to my personal goal, well, it is a pride not only to myself, but to the family and also to the place where I came from.
So, is it safe to assume that your number 1 in the rank would be the personal goal, and the rest would be much lower than that?
No, Your Honor.
The public?
Yes, I'm more on the public perception.
Now, I understand, we all understand that there will be a lot of individuals who would help you get this post, including government officials. So, if ever you get this post and there were public officials who were instrumental, in you getting the ombudsman position, would you have the guts, the courage to file cases against them, assuming the evidence would warrant?
Yes, if the evidence so warrants, whether they are instrumental to my appointment, well, I will proceed. Well, I think the position will has nothing to do with our relationship.
My last question would be, if appointed as the ombudsman, what significant development in your life would make you decide to quit the post before your term ends?
Well, I think aside from health, I think there will be no other reason that will stop me from functioning as the next ombudsman.
Thank you, Chair, and good luck.
Thank you, Your Honor.
I hope we get some tips.
The last winner came from Batangas.
Oh,
Yes.
Thank you, Attorney Firme. Our last interviewer is the Honorable Justice Jose Catral Mendoza.
Thank you very much, Attorney Marife. Good morning, Chairman. I represent the retired justices of the Supreme Court, and they have questions for you. Number 1 is, can you distinguish the right to remain silent from the right against self-incrimination?
Well, the right to remain silent is the right of an individual when confronted by charges, and then you cannot be mandated to answer what is being required from you, and the right to self-incrimination when you are being asked under investigation that you feel that will incriminate you, you have the right not to answer that question, Your Honor.
Does the Office of the Ombudsman have the legal standing to intervene on appeal in administrative cases resolved by it?
What's that last portion, Your Honor? Administrative?
In administrative cases resolved by it, by the Office of the Ombudsman. I will repeat the whole question. Does the Office of the Ombudsman have legal standing to intervene on appeal in administrative cases resolved by it?
Well, I don't think the Ombudsman need to intervene in all cases decided by them and on appeal. So it should be given already to the appellate court where the appeal is being lodged, Your Honor.
So your answer is he has no legal standing?
It has legal standing, but to have an active participation maybe, so not anymore.
Can the doctrine of condonation be applied motu proprio by the Office of the Ombudsman?
Well, I understand that the principle of condonation has already been changed. So I think motu proprio or otherwise, the Ombudsman can no longer, use that principle of condonation.
Suppose it refers to a previous act before that decision of Binay.
What's that again, Your Honor? I was not able to get it.
Can the doctrine of condonation be applied motu proprio, referring to acts committed before the Binay case?
Well,
where, the doctrine of condonation was abandoned by the Supreme Court.
If the acts complained of happened after the Binay case, I think the new law on condonation should still apply.
How about before?
Yes, even before the acts committed before the Binay case, I think the new principle on condonation should apply.
But the question is, can it be applied motu proprio by the Office of the Ombudsman?
Yes, I think that can be applied motu proprio.
Is the final and unappealable decision of the Office of the Ombudsman still be the subject of judicial review?
Well, in pure question of law, I think it can be elevated directly to the Supreme Court, Your Honor.
Under what rule?
Under Rule 65, Your Honor.
65 for grave abuse of
Grave abuse of discretion.
What is the principle of command responsibility under Republic Act 9851?
Well, the command responsibility is by reason of your position being the head of the agency who has the authority to control and supervision. So the acts of your subordinate will be liable under this principle of command responsibility.
For a superior to be liable, what element should you prove?
Well, he has direct control and supervision over his subordinate. And at least, he has a knowledge in the whatever committed by the subordinate.
The element, the last element, more important element,
What's that, Your Honor? I was at table.
the superior has no direct participation. Yeah.
Yes, that.
Okay lang. That was the questions of my colleagues. On my own, I have few questions only because I know you personally. I just ask you, what frustrates you? What frustrates you?
Well, what frustrates me is death of a close relative, especially if it is very sudden.
What is your view on corruption in the Philippines in general?
Well, there is this public perception that corruption in the country is so high that there is really a need to have a strong hand and cooperation from the law enforcement as well as the agency, particularly the Ombudsman and also the DOJ, on how to resolve this present issue of corruption in the country.
You describe it as so high. Is it endemic or prevalent? And before you do that, can you distinguish endemic corruption from prevalent corruption?
Well, endemic to me, it's almost very common in almost all part of the society, and then the other one is
Prevalent.
prevalent. So not in all sectors of the society, only in some offices maybe.
As to causation, is it the system or the individual?
Well, they say that's already part of the system. That's why earlier I said that I appointed as the next ombudsman, I will have to develop a corps of anti-corruption instructor and educators. Because to me, proactive is better than reactive.
Thank you very much, Chairman. That will be my last question. Your excuse.
Thank you, Your Honors. Have a good day.